Hey everyone,
Boy has arrived.
and today I'm going to be showing you how to make organic ambient music in the style of Jon Hopkins. As usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description, and let's get started. So, the first thing that we've got going on here are these two string drones, which sound like this. And so what these are basically, I had these two like samples of some strings. Here's the first one, and then the second one. And what I did was I put them into granulators. So if you don't know, granulator is a Max for Live device. It's made by Robert Henke, the guy who I believe made Ableton. And yeah, what it is, it's a granular synth. And so what granular synthesis is basically it's like playing a sound back, similar to the way a sampler would, where you put a sound in there and it plays it back. But what the sampler is going to do is it's going to play it from start to finish and just kind of like, yeah, normally I guess. What this does is it's jumping around different parts of the sample. So if you look at this here, you can see that little yellow line, and you can see it on the other one as well. That thing, that's basically the different parts of the sample that it's playing from. And then the way that you control this is using the spray knob. So the more you have, the more you can see it's going to jump around, and the less you have, the more it'll stay in that little small thing. So that was how I made those. And then basically what I did was I just took these and I have them playing fifths of each other. So we have B, and then we have E. And yeah, so basically you can see like they're just kind of playing off of each other. Like the goal here was just to have these two kind of things that would be like just a nice like musical drone in the background. You know, this is really smooth. It fits really well over the piano and all the other instruments. And yeah, so then for processing on those, what I've got on the first one here is I've got a bit of chorus just to give it some stereo width, and then a bit of reverb to give it some reverb. And then on the second one, what we've got is just an EQ8, cutting out some low end because there's a little bit of weird low end with this sample. And then just another reverb to give it some space. So these are really simple. It's just about, again, like making them sort of work together while still playing off of all the other stuff musically. And then just running some nice kind of like smooth sounds that work well sonically. So then the next thing that we have here is this drone, which sounds like this. And so the way that I made this was with analog. I'll show you the notes first so you can see this is actually playing E and B, the same notes that these two drones are playing. This is just kind of sitting underneath everything. The thing about Jon Hopkins' style is he's very good at the organic sounds, but he also uses a lot of like live, like analog synth type stuff, like a lot of Korg MS-20, stuff like that. So it's important to bring something like this in there, and it adds a nice element in the background because like if we have it without that, it's cool, but then when we bring it in, I feel like it's giving it like this cool kind of like retro feel, because that's kind of what analog sounds like. And yeah, so like I said, it's just playing B, E, and B, the same notes that those other two drones were playing. And yeah, then for the synth sound we've got here is we just got two saw waves, a little bit of white noise, going into a low pass filter. You can see I don't have any modulation on there. So usually I would do a bit of modulation, but today with this kind of sound, I kind of like just having it be really steady. And yeah, so then the only other kind of key thing there is I did use a bit of the resonance. That helps give it more of that like analog sort of old school vibe, because like you can hear it's just bringing out that sort of like the white noise a little bit and giving it that sort of like mellow sound. So then after that, I've got the amp envelope set like this. It's just kind of like a brick, like you just hit it and it starts playing, and then you let go and it stops. Pretty simple. And then the only other thing that I have in here is you can see I have a bit of vibrato. And so what I did was I used this vibrato to just kind of give it like a little bit of a different feel. If I turn this up, it's very quiet. Yeah, so you can hear it. And then if I turn it off, it just kind of like switches it up a little bit, gives it some movement, and like, yeah, it just makes it a little bit different than just like a standard kind of saw wave. So then after that, I'm just having a bit of echo. I like using echo because it gives it a bit of like kind of more analog feel, like a more organic feel, because it tends to do weird things to the sound and make it sound a bit warmer. So I use that to give this some space. And yeah, that's pretty much that for the drones. So then the next thing we have here is the piano, which sounds like this. And so I was trying to get that like abandoned window style like piano, like the super, almost like kind of like Nils Fromm, Oliver Arnold's like Max Cooper, like sort of modern classical style piano, if that makes any sense. And I think I got pretty close with Ableton's grand piano. So the way that I made this, like I said, it's Ableton's grand piano. You have this piano if you have like any version of Ableton. It's just the one that comes with Ableton. And yeah, what I did was I turned the hardness down a little bit here. So pretty straightforward there. Like it's really nothing too difficult. I just took this and turned the hardness down, and then what I did was I messed around with the velocities. So you can see I have all of these bottom notes here, and I'm going to talk about the chords in a second as well. But for the sound, like I said, you can see all these bottom notes here have like a lower velocity, and then these top notes have a higher velocity. So what this does is it gives you a really smooth, kind of like mellow low end, but then the high end has a little bit more brightness, and it punches through a little bit more. And I think that this is kind of the key to that sound, is to have the smooth low end in the piano with the bright high end. So then the only other thing that I did to kind of accentuate that was, you can see here I have this velocity, and what I did was I used the random to just kind of give it some random velocity. So if you listen, if I just keep hitting stop and start on this, you can hear the piano never sounds the same twice. And the reason for that is because I've got this random velocity, and then we're playing these pretty dense chords with 5 voices. So because each note is getting a different velocity each time, it makes it sound kind of different. And so this is a really, really good way to introduce kind of a more organic feel into your music. If you're not just playing the piano in live, it's a great way to make it sound a little bit more live as well. And yeah, it just kind of, like I said, like gives it kind of some more organic randomness. Because like if you play a piano, it's never going to be exactly the same twice. Like especially if you're playing dense chords, you're never going to be able to hit the notes with exactly the same velocity twice. It just would be humanly impossible. So to have that happen in the computer is kind of an issue, because it's just going to make it sound kind of flat and digital. But having this random velocity is a really, really good way to combat that. So then I'll show you the rest of the stuff for the sound here, and then I'll show you the chords. So all we have after that is I have a utility just turning it up. The signal was kind of quiet since the velocities are so low, so I just use that to turn up the volume while still keeping those lower velocities. And then after that, I just have this echo, which is set up like this, so I don't have too much of it. The dry wood is only on 20%, but what this is doing is, like I said with that other drone, it's just giving the piano more vibe and more character while still giving it some space that, of course, the echo would give it. So yeah, so then for the chords here, what I've got is these are all just basic major and minor chords. And the way that I made them was like this. So I'll mute these voices really quick. Yeah, so I made them like this. So I started with these basic major and minor chords. We just have F major, C major, E minor, and then G major. And so the way that I made these was I just started with these really simple chords, just root note, third, and then the fifth. And then I just started playing around with the voicings of those. So like the first thing I did was I took the fifth and put it up an octave, and then I doubled up that an octave up. So you can see like those notes up top are that, and we'll put those up. And then I just doubled up the root note an octave down. And there we go. So what this does is it just kind of, well, for one, it kind of replicates how a lot of people would play the piano, because a lot of times when people play piano, they're not just playing like those basic kind of like these chords. Usually, you know, you would want to play something a little bit bigger that's more spread out across the keyboard to cover more ground and make a fuller, more rich sound. But like also, it just makes it so much bigger and more powerful. Like I said, it's spread out more over the keyboard, so you're getting more space between the notes. It gives you more clarity, and then you're getting a broader, bigger sound. So I definitely recommend doing that. And yeah, then as far as the actual chords go, like I said, it's just basic major and minor chords, and then just kind of playing these more like epic, sort of cinematic, I guess you would say, chord progressions. So that's the piano. The next thing that I'm going to show you here is this thunder sample, which sounds like this. So what this is I was trying to recreate the sound in Abandoned Window and in some of Jon Hopkins' other like ambient kind of stuff, where he has like this really low thunder rumbling underneath the track. And what this does is it creates some really great low end, and it's kind of cool too, because like with ambient music you wouldn't usually have like a super powerful bass line or like, you know, a bass that's like just kind of chugging along underneath everything. It's sometimes a little bit tough to get going in your more like ambient kind of spacey tracks, but adding this low pass thunder sample is a really, really great way to do that, because you can hear it's filling out that range of the frequency spectrum. So the way that I did this was I took this thunder sample, just like something like that, and I put it through some effects. So the first effect that we have here is this amp. I use this blues setting, and all it's doing is it's just kind of giving more power to the sound. You can hear it brings out the low end a lot, like on those rumbly things. And then after that, I just added a low pass filter. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, it just gives it that nice kind of like low background noise that really helps to fill out the frequency spectrum. And yeah, so then the next thing we have here is some room noise, which sounds like this. And so what this is just some room noise I had recorded at some point, I guess, and I put it in here. And yeah, what this basically does is it kind of gives you like this piano sort of like room noise sound. Like a lot of times when you're playing with a piano in a room, you can hear like stuff like the hammers moving, and like when you move your fingers on the keyboard, and like all that kind of stuff. And Jon Hopkins uses that a lot in his music. A lot of people do this, but he does it very, very well. And so I was trying to recreate that, like kind of that like clicking sort of like random background sound. And yeah, so that's all that is. It's just kind of giving it, more context and more texture and more like realness, It just kind of helps to bring the piano to life, because it makes it feel more, like more realistic. So then after that, I have 2 rain samples. The first one sounds like this, and the second one sounds like this. So they're both pretty quiet. These are just kind of in the background. I felt like they sounded good. I didn't want to use like vinyl noise or anything like that, so I had to get a little creative with it. And this is what I came up with. Like I said, it's just some samples of rain. They kind of fit together nicely. Like you can hear this one is mostly in the high end, and I also high passed it a bit and added that slight low pass on top. And then this one's more like in the mid range. So they accentuate each other pretty well, and they just kind of like add to each other, if that makes any sense. So that's pretty much it for this one. I just wanted to show you guys some techniques. I got a few requests for this one, and you guys seem to like rather Jon Hopkins tutorial, so I figured this was a no-brainer. And yeah, so thank you again, everybody. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. You can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. Might have already said that one. Anyway, thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.